Canadian innovators who are changing the game. I'm Sapna Malhotra, your proud Canadian host. Can you believe this? This is our 4th week since the actual launch, and sometimes I need to pinch myself that this has become a reality. In fact, I decided to throw myself a little birthday party, a 1-month birthday party. And also on Thursday, November 23rd, it will be exactly 1 month since we launched. So I actually invited some of the speakers that we've already heard from and some that you're going to hear from shortly and some of the listeners. But it didn't feel complete, not without, we've got listeners from around the globe. In fact, we just got some new listeners in India, Sweden, and Switzerland. Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us. So it didn't feel quite right having a party and celebration without everybody. So I decided to step outside of my comfort zone, and I am going to do a Facebook Live video so that you can actually see me, meet me face to face, and even some of the listeners and speakers that we've actually featured or about to feature. And then, we can actually have a conversation. So I'm going to do all of this and put it on the Can Innovate Facebook community. So please join in on the festivities. It wouldn't be a celebration or a milestone without you guys. And I would love to hear your thoughts and reactions to it. Now, speaking of thoughts and reactions, I'm going to channel a bit of Gary V and say ratings and reviews are my oxygen. So please leave a rating and review. We always need them. And speaking of ratings and reviews, today on episode 6, we'll be chatting with Rob Catalano from WorkTango. And we chat about how real-time connection and empathy with employees is truly transforming how we do business. And in fact, a lot of the senior executives are truly seeing the correlation between employees and their top line. And we talk about so many other different types of topics, about how they're using machine learning and sentiment to give a voice to the employees, finally, right? And then how HR is evolving, how companies are starting to treat employees as consumers and no longer as a separate entity. And, Rob even shares about the art of getting known, liked, and trusted, and so much more. Now, Rob is truly is internationally known as a thought leader around employee engagement. In fact, by the time this episode airs, he'll be on stage somewhere in England delivering insights about how to engage and leverage the power of modern employee. So we have so much to learn from Rob. Now, speaking of modernization, I need to thank the Can Innovate podcast sponsor, WeWork Canada. And WeWork truly is modern and forward-thinking. I honestly absolutely love being a part of their community. And they've created a community of creators that help companies grow, not just with their beautiful modern spaces, but also with the benefits, amenities, and the access to people and networks that you would not normally have access to. It's a very big supportive community, and it really enables businesses to grow. Now, when you talk about being able to do business development and you're doing sales and you're brainstorming and you may be a business person that needs access to technology, there's somebody everywhere around WeWork that's willing to help and talk to you. And so they really create this kind of community of and cultivate this culture of being able to innovate, brainstorm, share insights, and it's just phenomenal. Like, they have networking events constantly and panel discussions, and they bring things to you. So I absolutely love WeWork in Canada, and they're expanding. Like, they now actually have 2 offices in Toronto, and they just opened up offices in Vancouver and Montreal. And if you want to be part of this or just even see what it's all about, you can book a tour at WeWork.com and go check it out. I promise you it's Instagram, picture worthy. So go check it out. It is so worth it. Now, let's get to this week's episode and pick Rob's brain about some amazing insights, because he's got a lot to share. We are honored to have Rob Catalano, one of the co-founders of WorkTango, with us today. WorkTango is a software platform that actually gives employees a voice and companies truly actionable insights. Rob is really well known in the industry for being an HR thought leader and speaks around the world on how companies can best engage employees to drive growth. In the past 3 years, he's spoken in 30 different cities. Rob is truly impressive and very passionate about how to make employees successful. His experience is definitely unique. He's got a background with HR technology, a founding employee at Achievers, and now a co-founder at WorkTango. We have lots to learn from Rob. Not to mention, he's actually also been recently named as one of the 2017 top global employee engagement influencers, along with recently being appointed to sit on the chair for the Enterprise Engagement Alliance. And if that's not enough, Rob is an avid hockey and volleyball player, a big traveler, and a loyalty points junkie. He collects loyalty points on, I guess, everything and anything. And he loves connecting with other passionate individuals around the globe. Rob, did I miss anything in that intro?
The only thing you missed is that even though I have an Italian background, you can still say my name better than I can. So that was really, really impressive. I enjoyed that.
Even though it took me like 3 tries, right?
Yeah, that's going in the blooper reel for sure.
Totally. So I love this WorkTango that I was reading about how it's on a mission to improve lives at work. I mean, seriously, where was WorkTango when I was in the corporate world? Seriously. And it feels like WorkTango has this kind of secret ingredient and sauce that makes it happen. So how did this idea of WorkTango come about?
Yeah, so it was a bit of a journey, right? As mentioned earlier, I spent many years, over a decade at Achievers, which, if anyone doesn't know, it was a Toronto startup that was in the HR technology space, helping companies recognize and reward their employees and reinforce key behaviors you wanted to see more of. And the messaging and the conversations I had for many years was how recognition was the driver of engagement. It's what was, your company had to have in order to have a successful organization, successful employees. But the reality is there's so many different drivers of engagement, and the way that companies were getting that information was through annual engagement surveys, and really that's about it. Some are even doing them every 2 or 3 years. And as our companies move faster and our workforce becomes more modern, my challenge was is companies, first off, were only doing these assessments, very infrequently. So we wanted to make sure that companies could do this a lot quicker, give people a voice, but also serve information to HR executives, leaders, and so on in real time. So it was a bit of a frustration how companies were doing it. It was too infrequent. It took too long. It was expensive. And we wanted to just do something that really fueled our passion to make work better. We actually always say we don't have a mission at WorkTango. We have a passion, and that passion is to improve lives at work because missions end. But it really, it just fueled and continued what I was doing for so long in the HR tech space. It feels good, having a product and serving customers in a very positive way, and WorkTango is kind of an extension of that.
This is great. So how specifically does WorkTango really work? I mean, no, it's a SaaS model. So I'm guessing it's got analytics, dashboards. Like, how does it work?
Yeah, so we basically allow companies to get the voice of their employees for any initiative important to them. Like typically you might hear about a typical engagement company or someone that does that. What we'll do is for any type of program, whether it's, again, engagement, change management, readiness for major transformational change, and we'll allow companies to fully customize what they want to ask their employees and how frequent they can do it. Some of our customers do it quarterly, some do it every single week. And then what it does is it takes that information in an anonymous way, and you could still slice data up later in terms of where that person's department is or who their leader is, but you're not having to ask those questions. But what it does, it takes that data and serves up these very robust reports, dashboards, insight, not just to HR and executives, but to individual leaders, if you'd like, as well, to make them very accountable to their teams. What we also do is typically most of these types of initiatives are, you're asking people to rate things, provides a lot of quantitative data, but what gets lost are these comments and this rich information. So what WorkTango also does is we'll take not only the quantitative items, but the voice of the employee and what they write in their comments or the feedback that they provide. And we actually use machine learning and different other algorithms to serve up themes and sentiment so we can see really quickly what people are looking at, what's the most important theme that's on the employee's mind, and again, serve that in real time, not having to read thousands of comments.
That's impressive. So that means with these machine learning algorithms in the background, you kind of also have some ideas of best practices and recommendations sitting in the background.
Yeah. So, if we do find that something, for example, a specific engagement driver is low, well, we know what we can serve up in terms of the right things to do. Or how do you just serve up just insight to individual leaders in real time to say, here's what you're doing really well. Here's what maybe is trending down from last time, and really give them a nudge in the insight to make actionable change in their teams.
So that means, since you said it's customizable, that means if I recognize that I've got different generations sitting there, I can customize it based on also those type of demographics as well?
Yeah, so the way it works is that you can actually look at your data and split it up or slice it in virtually any unlimited way. So if you wanted to look at your data responses by generation, you want to look at by gender, you want to look at it by country. We've had interesting ways. Companies are looking at it from performance ratings in the organization, right? To see if there's correlations between highly engaged employees and ones that are performing. But it's great because the system will allow customization, but our customers are taking it to other levels and finding new creative ways to really get insight that matters to their company, not what we dictate the way that they should look at their data. And what's actually really great is that in a very short period of time, our customers are traditionally, medium and large size enterprises that our customers have employees in over 30 countries right now. We're working in 8 different languages. So it extends. I mean, our companies are global. That's just a reality today. So we want to make sure our tool and our platform could, make sure it provides a great function for those types of organizations that have this need.
See, and this is really cool because HR has always been kind of a very challenging stakeholder, especially when it comes to change. And then I was reading one of your articles online that got published. I think HRM Online. And for listeners out there, I'll put links to the articles that I'm referring to. And you mentioned that HR needs to rebrand. Does HR actually acknowledge that many of their practices are out of date and that they do need to rebrand?
I mean, I think like any department or anything out there, there's always resistance to change. It's different. People, like doing things the way that they were always done in the past. And yeah, I mean, think about it. We call it human resources. Like, I don't know how we shouldn't think of our employee as resources that you can call upon or use for whatever you'd like. I mean, they're people, right? So I just think that's it's one very, and I was trying to make the point in that article that it's one way to look at the world where how do we treat them like people, right? Their employees are people too. They're not resources at our disposal.
It's really interesting because in episode 3, I had Ray Kahani that was talking about a book called Radical Candor. And he was talking about how this book has really changed a lot of the way he thinks about how it cultivates the right environment to drive the right behaviors and skills. But it's not just only about being direct and timely and clear, but it's also caring about the people. And it sounds like WorkTango really enables to have that direct, timely conversation to make things happen with those people.
And that's just it, right? Most people think of whether it's radical candor or feedback has to come top down, right, from leader to employee. But the reality is that if you give your employees a voice, they're part of this process. They, are more involved, right? We always talk about employees just don't want to be a number. They want to have impact, right? So if you give them that voice and potentially radical candor or feedback or voice, across the rest of their organization, now they can actually have some of that impact. So it's important for them to, again, treat them like people and have their voice heard.
And it's interesting because, I was mentioning before about how Adobe and Accenture and Deloitte and other big companies kind of jumped on the bandwagon to kind of remove that employee performance reviews. So how does that have an impact with this? Or is this something that can be correlated together?
Well, think about it, right? If, there's all this talk out there about how performance management is changing, and it is in certain instances. I've actually done a lot of conversations around that and different, HR leadership type functions. But the reason why it's changing, and I guess first off, what is it changing to? Well, it's getting away from these annual performance reviews that aren't providing a lot of value to employees. It's kind of a checkbox that says what you're doing to define your compensation. But it's changing to be more agile, right? Again, it's reflecting how our modern employee and our modern workforce works. We always say that employees don't work in years and in quarters. They work in days and hours, and our HR practices and our technology has to reflect that. And and I think it's not what WorkTango does particularly in terms of, that function. But if you correlate to what we were just talking about, how, that's how employees work. We have to be able to get their voice more than once a year, like the annual engagement survey. I think there's a lot of things changing in the space that's making things, again, more frequent, agile, and really treating employees like consumers, right? Like you wouldn't talk to your consumer or your customer once a year. Right, you try to interact with them and engage with them and make sure that they have what they need. And it's really that shift of mindset in terms of how things used to be done.
No, I love that because it really is, creating a community, gathering that feedback so it is an open two-way conversation because they have a stake in the ground too, right? It's not just their career, it's also their reputation that they're putting on the line.
Yeah, and what's funny is when we talk about these types of things, people are always, a lot of people have questions about that. Well, will that really work? Will it never change? And I always go back to achievers, right? 10 years ago, companies, the way they rewarded their employees and recognized them was every 5 years you got to choose from, some rewards that most of the time you didn't want, and you were basically rewarded and recognized for sitting in your seat and breathing, right? It wasn't performance-based, it wasn't frequent enough, and now the whole concept of daily recognition in your organization has served a purpose and it's changed over the years. So, I guess looking at an example where things have changed, we're going to continue to see more change in the workforce or HR space.
So do you think the HR industry is going to really revamp itself in the next few years?
Absolutely. There's been more investment in human capital management technology in the last 2 years than the 20 before it combined.
Wow, I had no idea it was that big of a stat. That's a lot of investment. And HR industry itself, I guess the buyers are the HR, or is it the CEOs that are buying into this?
Well, I think like anything today, especially for large organizations, you might have a key person that's championing it. But like any technology today, how do you get the IT and security involved in that? How does communication get involved from whether it's marketing or internal communication? So I think today technology, especially for the whole organization as opposed to buying something for one department, there are more people involved. Typically it's HR or internal communications driving these conversations. But a lot of times, and we're really lucky because we get to work with companies that are focused on their employees, it may come from the top. It may be driven by the CEO because that's the company they want to build. But it's typically, we do talk to a lot of the HR and at times the key executives or CEOs in those companies.
This is brilliant. So how did you guys get this idea off the ground? Is this like VC or angel investor funded, or is it self-funded? How did it all come together?
No, so I like to say we're customer funded. We bootstrapped and went down the journey of acquiring customers and growing that way. We're not against raising capital. I've been in an environment in Achievers where there was a lot of money raised. But at this moment, it's something that we haven't done. We always look at the option and there's always possibilities. But today we're customer. Everything's come from the customer so far.
That's brilliant. I love that. Customer funded. Because in this world right now, everyone's so VC focused about getting that funding. This is really a beautiful story because being customer funded really talks about that demand and supply. And just to let you know, to get prepared for this interview, I did some research on WorkTango itself, and the reviews that you've got from a lot of your customers around the world are phenomenal. I never saw anything below 5 stars. So it just is a real big testament to you guys that you've got the right model. So congrats.
You know what? And I appreciate that. And it's funny, right? So many people ask me, especially there's a real big tech community here. And I spent a lot of time in San Francisco and in London, some big tech communities there as well. And I often get the question, what are you building this for? Like, when do you want to exit? Like, and how much money do you want to make before you take a deal? And the reality is like, don't build a company that way. Like, build a company to make customers ridiculously happy, and that's the focus. We are going to build great technology. We're going to offer fantastic services as well to make our customers ridiculously happy, and we focus on that. The rest will come. So I'm very proud of the team, but I know it's a focus of ours to make sure our customers love their experience.
Well, it's definitely there, and yeah, it's all over the internet and multiple different forums about the rating reviews. It's just brilliant beyond belief. So that's a good point about building a company and brand inside and outside of Canada. Is there something we can learn from you from this, either from Achievers or WorkTango, about how to build this type of company and brand?
Build this company and brand. Do you mean just from, if you're getting started as a small organization?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess originally when it comes to your product has to have product market fit. You have to talk to your customers. You have to make sure you're providing value, right? I mean, you could have all the money in the world to invest in fantastic marketing, sales, people, but if your product or services don't deliver, then you're not going to get there. So I think a lot of companies invest in, what the look and feel is going to be, the messaging and so on, but they haven't got that product market fit first. And we're a really good example at WorkTango, right? We started with 3 MVPs. We got them in people's hands, got feedback about what worked, and continue to push the envelope on how do we sit with our customers or potential customers and hear what their needs are. So I think it's really just focusing on that. But once you have that product market fit, I mean, the reality is that selling to someone or having people buy your product or service is about being known, liked, and trusted. So what are the channels in which you can get known? How do you become liked and trusted? It's providing education, great content, and really helping people in their jobs. It's not selling to people, it's helping people. So it's a very that's a very brief and not detailed way to put it, but there's a kind of an art to getting known, liked, and trusted out there.
So has there been any lessons that you kind of learned in this venture or, in Achievers?
So I think that there's things you fundamentally know and you read, and then when you look back, you realize you didn't do enough of it. And I think the first one is it's always just surrounding yourself with great people, right? Start with who, then what, and we've all been there, right? We know where we surround ourselves with maybe not the greatest people or waited too long to make those changes. And I find if you just put yourself with fantastic people, fantastic things happen. And Achievers is a great testament to that, and that's what we're trying to replicate here at WorkTango in terms of the people that we bring on board. And so that's kind of the big one that comes to mind. And I think you just said it, right? If you're going to throw something out there and not get feedback from your potential users moving forward, it's going to be tough to really be successful. And to my point, like, those aren't aha moments. We all know it. We just get so busy in our day to day and don't prioritize it, unfortunately. And it really just needs to be a priority.
No, I love that. Surround yourself with great people. The who and then the what. That is awesome.
And I don't think I came up with that. I think that was from Good to Great.
Another great book. So in this journey, was there any kind of tools or resources that you're able to leverage from the government or other types of groups or innovation or startup hubs, or anything when you guys are building that you wish you had or able to leverage?
Well, we have used some of the government funding, like the CDMN soft landing program, some of the wage subsidies that come with it. Not specifically from a funding standpoint, but we're actually a part of the Mars Ventures. So having that type of community or innovation hub that's been helpful on whether it's through talent or advisory or other connections that we have there. So I think one thing too is like just you don't need to do it yourself, right? Especially if you're starting an organization. There's so many people that are willing to help you, people, companies, government, programs. So we've used some of those tools and definitely glad that we have. And then there's also other tools out there that people, I've learned just meeting other entrepreneurs about just getting credits for specific, whether it's AWS credits or with other tools out there. Like we have a partnership with IBM and their Watson technology and using those types of things. So there's stuff out there. And it's hard to start, especially if you're not, well funded initially without these types of things. So there's a lot of stuff out there. Just it's a matter of reaching out, doing your research, and actually taking advantage of it.
Yeah, and that's the hard part because not everyone knows where to go. There's no single source of information. You really have to kind of really dig and network to learn from others that are going through it or has been there and done that.
Yeah, and you know what? It's getting better. Like there's a lot out there. There's companies that will try to advise you and they'll help you with your shred items, and it's there. But I think it's worth it. Concentrated effort or keeping someone accountable in your company to just really keep it top of mind.
Tell me, what advice would you give to aspiring or budding Canadian innovators?
Oh, advice to budding Canadian innovators. I think first off, leverage the people around you, right? There are a lot of people to help you. Right. And they're willing to do it. They've seen success. They want to see other people be successful, especially as a Canadian innovator or if you're starting up an organization. And there are people to help. I see too often people bury their head, try to do it themselves. And that's, I don't think there's any pride in that. Right. You leverage what's around you. And I think that's kind of what I mentioned before, not just leverage the people, but the programs. Right. We just talked about the government funding and you don't have to do it yourself. But the only, I guess, advice is it's hard work. Right? Like there's sacrifices. There's things that you won't do, that you used to do, for example. But I think the reward is huge when you start seeing what you built provide customers value, right? When people start using your tool, liking it, and we're just talking rating it high, whatever it is, that's where you start seeing the sacrifices really pay off. And that's my advice. It's hard work. Like when you're paving a way and being a trailblazer, you don't do that without some effort, a great idea, and so on.
Well, they always say, right, no one got to the top without getting help. And I think in this kind of environment, it's really weird. I don't know whether it's pride or secrecy. We forget to ask for help or are ashamed to ask for help when really there's tons of people around that would just love to collaborate and work with you.
Yeah. And you know what? Like what I found is help others, right? You get different perspectives. You get to see what their challenges are, right? And it's something that, we try to do, especially the founders here, is how do we just help our community around us, right? We're going to learn so much.
You do. And Rob, there's so much I want to learn about you itself. I mean, besides being a hockey and volleyball player and a loyalty points junkie. You've been very successful in your career, and you're very young too. So I definitely want to learn more about you. Like, do you have any key business philosophies or favorite quotes? Something that kind of keeps you focused?
It's funny. Every time I hear the favorite quote, it's for many years I had it put up in our area back at Achievers, but it's the Henry Ford quote: "Is if you asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse." And I think it's just really great way to look at the world. That again, don't always look in the rearview mirror in terms of how things were done. How do you innovate and do things differently, right? And we're seeing great entrepreneurs starting to do those type of things. So that's one I love. And then, I think you said business philosophy, right? I think a key business philosophy that I had, and I don't want to repeat myself, but I mentioned it earlier, is build a company to make customers happy. Right? Don't build a company to flip it or make a bunch of money. I just think that's the wrong motivator. And I've seen companies raise a ton of money and they start hiring people that are there to make a buck and then don't believe in the mission or the purpose of what the company is trying to accomplish. And I just think if you find people that are there to make the customers happy and want to join that mission or passion with you, those are the things I think that people should really be focusing on. And it's a big philosophy that I have, right? I mean, think about it, right? Like a lot of I sit in a company here in an office with 3 or 4 great companies of people that have all exited and done well. And instead of keeping their jobs or having a good salary, they're all passionate about doing something else and building a great company, right? They're not worried about making a great salary or becoming rich.
And how do you stay productive? I mean, you've got so many different hats. I mean, I see you at so many conferences and you're speaking and you're prepping and you're doing these types of interviews. And is there a popular productivity tool that you use?
I think my lifeline is Evernote. Like just between any note I need to take or to search on the fly or on my phone, and I have a really bad memory, so I need something like that that's easy to search and kind of organize things. I use Calendly a lot. If you've never heard of it, it's just sending people links to book time with you. I find there's so much wasted time and giving people different times and dates and when we should meet, and it's just something like that saves a lot of effort and time. And then, I think one thing that I wouldn't say I don't know if we want to call it a productivity tool, but in terms of like our conferencing systems here, we do business all around the world. So and so many contacts all around the world where it's just great to be able to get on your phone or your laptop and talk to anyone and not cost you a fortune. Those are the 3 that come to mind. But Evernote for me is like literally if that disappeared, I'd be in trouble.
You might need a backup to your backup.
Yeah, I can figure that
out. Do you recommend any great business books or a podcast? It doesn't even have to be a business book. Is there anything that you recommend or you're currently reading right now?
So just, I guess, in terms of what I'm doing now, I still do my Tim Ferriss podcast on my commute to work. And it's just a good collection of, whether it's work hacks, life hacks and so on. And I just like there's just a bunch of different things that he'll talk about or have guest speakers talk about. And I think it's just a lot of it's about productivity as well. So that's one that I know I do on a very regular basis. Favorite business book. There's so many out there. It's so tough to choose. I think what interesting, maybe more as a story that people can maybe take a nugget from is that back at Achievers, every single employee that started at the company would get Good to Great. They would have to read it, and it was about aligning people to what it's going to take to build this type of company. So, and it doesn't have to be that book, but if it's something you're passionate about as an innovator, and you need to surround yourself with those people to get aligned to what that vision is. I think that's a really cool thing to do is choose your own favorite business book or podcast and then surround that with other people and talk about how you can learn from it and implement those things in your company.
By the way, I'm a big junkie for Good to Great. It's kind of like one of my go-to books all the time whenever I have to remember to do something. And Tim Ferriss, you can never go wrong. I just finished listening to Sir Richard Branson. Just blew my mind. So I'm with you on those. Those are really great ones.
Yeah, and I keep telling myself to just maybe take a break from Tim and listen to something else. And I don't know if there'll be comments on this or if maybe I'll look up the Branson one. But if you have any other suggestions, shoot them over.
That would be the Can Innovate podcast that you're on.
Oh, okay. Yes. I would just assume that would show up on my phone.
Shameless plug. I'm doing the terrible job at that. So, do you have a personal habit that helps you stay productive? Like, I'm always trying to find new ways to do things. Like, I've actually adopted Tim Ferriss's kind of methodology of just checking, your email once I've accomplished one of my main goals for the day. It's actually been really kind of great, but then, of course, I get sidetracked.
Yeah, I find that especially when you're early stage, I mean, even with other things going on in life, it's hard to stay productive. There's a lot of distractions. So my kind of personal habit that really helps is that I wake up super early. I wake up at around anytime between 5 and 5:30, and what I do is I make sure that time to 7 o'clock is for me. So there's usually the gym or a small meditation portion or eating a good breakfast, and I really, really don't look at my emails at that time or anything that's come in. And I also make my bed so that there's that one completed task. It's like the easiest thing to do. Really started doing that. That is kind of a really good start to a day. And then it's nice to get into an office at 7:30 or 8 and get a lot of things accomplished from an email standpoint, and then shutting that off for a while. So kind of what I've done, or what I have been doing for a while to try and stay productive, because especially those things that make you happy, and for me it is being active and doing those types of things. When you're trying to innovate, things move. You have to adjust, you have to pivot, you have to kind of move around and take opportunities as they come, and it's really easy to miss the things you love. So then that usually happens in the evening. So I like getting it all done in the morning so I feel productive.
And I guess when you relax, is there a kind of favorite hidden Canadian hotspot or restaurant or type of delight that you like to indulge in?
Call it a Canadian delight, but it's not a hidden one by any means. But I live very close to the Drake Hotel, so it's kind of like my home office. So hanging on the patio and working, or in the winter, there's great food and drinks and all that other stuff. So it's a place that I frequently go for that, and I don't have any delight other than maybe a nice pint, but that's kind of I'm a pretty simple guy that way.
Well, besides finding you at the Drake Hotel, which I'm sure many of our listeners are going to definitely look for you there to connect with you, is there other ways our listeners can connect with you?
Yeah, I mean, reach out, whether it's, Rob Catalano on Twitter, or, email Rob at worktango.io. I find LinkedIn is amazing just to connect with people, and messages are there, and, it's like an inbox that's, not too distracting. So you can go to it when when you have time to follow up with people. So just grab me on LinkedIn. Like I said, the more people, it's just great to connect with other people, find out what they're doing. It's always insightful. And like I said, typically those turn into conversations where we're helping each other be successful, which is great and fulfilling. So yeah, reach out. I love it.
Guys, the ones that are listening, I'm going to definitely put all the Twitter, LinkedIn, all that, his email address, and the directions to the Drake Hotel in the show notes. So you'll always know where to find Rob. So
make sure when you spell my name, somehow try to phonetically do it the wonderful way you said it in Italian. It'd be interesting to see what you come up with.
Rob Catalano, and I've got the hands going.
Perfect.
Thanks again, Rob. This is brilliant.
No, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you again for joining us this week. Time is a gift, so thank you very much. So check out our Facebook Live video on Thursday, November 23rd, as we celebrate our first month launch. I can't wait to celebrate this with you. And next week, we'll be chatting with Mark Lafleur, the CEO of TruLocal, where you can actually shop for clean, locally sourced meat products online, and they bring it to you. So they do the research and bring it to you. I just totally love that. And it's a very totally different industry too. And that's just it. I want to explore different industries and have different conversation, because this cross-pollination makes us more innovative in the way we think and how we kind of operate. And that's what it's all about. And again, a big thank you to WeWork Canada for becoming our official sponsor, and we cannot say thank you enough. And go and take a tour. It is so worth it. Their offices space are absolutely stunning, and the environment and the culture that they've created. And I promise you, they'll look great in your Instagram pictures. I will put the link in the show notes below. And of course, share this podcast with your friends and family. We are getting to the season of giving. And of course, I'm channeling Gary Vee these days. Ratings and reviews are my oxygen. So please leave a rating or review, nominate a Canadian innovator that deserves to be recognized, and the offer still stands. If you send me a screenshot of your review, I'll send you a cup of coffee. Now, this is only open for Canadian residents at this time. However, I will get more creative to figure out how to provide more offers and deals to all of our listeners around the world. And of course, remember, this is a podcast, so what do you want to hear? What do you want to see? And who do you think is doing something that's totally cool? And I can't wait to chat with you next week. Cheers.